Alright guys, we are done with this profile page. Now let's work on how we can share our post. As you can see, we have this link here. If I click, we will have this input and this text area, which is a text editor. So I can edit my text in here. And as you can see, here is a button. So we need to add this button inside our header. If I click this publish, a new model will be opened here. I can choose my image from here. Let's say this one, and in here I can preview my title. So I forget to add this title. If I add and click this publish, you can see I can preview this title and the description here. So I can change them and add more text here, and in here I can add tags. Let's say tags. You can see this tags will be displayed here. So based on this tags, we are going to filter our data, and finally we will have this publish button that will help us publish our post. Okay, now let's work on that. I'm going to open this home page, and from here you can see we have this route. I haven't made the route, so now let's make the route for this one. I'm going to open this app.jsx here. I'm going to close this one. And in here we need to define a new route. Path is going to be this right/right, and we need to have element component for this, and the component is going to be right. Now let's make this component. So inside this component and this home, we need to have a new folder called right. Now let's add the right component here. Okay, now let's import it. Okay, now if I click this link, as you can see I am inside the right route. Alright, so now we will have an input and this text editor. So at first we need to install a new library which is called React-query. So in here just look for React-query, and as you can see it has this npm. Just click it here and this page will be open. Okay, as you can see we have this dependency. I'm going to copy this from here, and I'm going to open the terminal, new terminal, and just paste it here. Okay, now let's see how we can implement it. As you can see we need to have this CSS also. I'm going to copy this CSS CDN link, and I need to add it inside this main.jsx, but this theme is not going to be Snow, it should be Babel. Okay, now let's open up this right here. Okay, as you can see our library has been installed. Now you can use it. So I'm going to change this div to be section, and this section will have a class name. So width should be 90% for small devices. For empty devices above, width should be 80%. For large devices above, width should be 60%. MX auto. And finally we need to add padding wide to be 3 rem. Now inside here we need to have an input with type text. Placeholder should be title, and also we need to have a class name for text, and the class name is going to be text for Excel. Outline should be none, and width is going to be full. And now let's check it. You can see here is our input. Following that we need to have our text editor. So in here I'm going to import this React-query. Let's open up this library again. As you can see we can import it from here. I'm going to copy this and add it here. Again the theme should be Babel, and also we need to get it from here. Okay, we don't have this unchanged and value. Now let's get them. So I'm going to copy this from here As you can see, here is our text editor, but we need to have a placeholder like this one. So to define a placeholder, we just write placeholder inside it. As you can see, here is our placeholder. Alright, and I'm going to change this to be description. So this should be description, and this one set description. Now as you can see, our inputs are ready, but for this text editor, as you can see, our text is very small. Now let's add a class name for this one. I'm going to add a class name, and we need to have a class which is called write. I'm going to add it inside the global CSS, and margin y is going to be 5. Now let's add this write class name here. So I'm going to open this index.css, and now we need to target this write class in here. So to target our text editor, we need to write ql-editor. This should be ql. Alright, inside here we just change the font size to be 1.2 rem. Now we need to write this important keyword here to override the text editor styling, and also we need to have a padding of 0. Again, it should be important. Okay, now let's check it. As you can see, our font size is much more bigger now. So if I navigate to the original website, as you can see, we have this button. So this button should be inside our header. Now let's implement it. So I'm going to open header from here, and it should be home header. Now inside here, when the user navigates to this route, I want to display this publish button. Otherwise, I want to display this write button. So at first, we need to get our route here. Okay, so in here, I'm going to import this path name from use location, which is a hook coming from React Router DOM. Now, if you console log this path name, let's check it in the browser here. As you can see, here is our path, which is this one. Okay, so based on this path, we are going to display our button. So I'm going to delete this console log, and if I scroll down, as you can see, we have a link in here. So I'm going to copy this from here, and instead I'm going to set a condition. So if path is equal to this /write, then I want to display a button here with the text of publish. Otherwise, I want to display this link. It should be path name, not path. Okay, now you can see we have this publish button here because we have this route. But if I navigate to other routes, you can see we have this write button here. If I navigate to this write path, it will be this publish button. Now let's style this button here. Okay, so I'm going to give it a class name. So the class name is going to be vite coming from index.css, but we need to have a background color of green and 700, and also we need to have a padding y of 1. Okay, now you can see here is our button, and we need to give it a text color of white, and also we are going to give it rounded of full. Okay, it's gonna be full. Alright, you can see here is our button. Now when I click this button, as you can see, it will open a new model. Now let's make this model. So down here, I'm going to open my write component again. So down this text editor, I'm going to have another div, and inside here we need to have a new component called preview. Now let's make this component. So I'm going to add this component inside this write folder. Okay, and let's import it here. Okay, you can see here is our preview component. Now let's style it. So I'm going to open this here, and I'm going to change this to be section with the class name of absolute, and inset should be 0. Background color is going to be white, and z index is 30. Okay. Now you can see here is our preview model here. So inside this section, I'm going to have a div. As you can see, we have this button here again. So inside here, I'm going to have a span tag. Now let's add our icon here. Okay. You can see here is our icon. I'm going to give a class name to this icon. So position should be absolute. Right is going to be 1 rem. For empty devices above, right should be 5 rem for bigger devices. And also top is going to be 3 rem, and text is going to be 2 XL. And finally, cursor should be pointer. Okay. As you can see, here is our icon, and this div also have a class name of size, our left and right padding, and margin Y should be 2 rem. Alright. So now inside here down this icon, I'm going to have another div, and this div will preview the text. Okay. For this div, I'm going to have a class name of margin top 8 rem, flex column. For empty devices above, it should be flex row, and gap should be 10. So this is our separator. We separate our left and right divs. So inside here, we are going to have 2 more divs. So the first one will have a class name of flex1, and the second one is also class name of flex1. Okay. So if I add this left and right here, and also we need to add this dash. I forget to add here. Now let's check. As you can see, this is our left div and this is our right div. Okay. Now let's add the details of the left div. Now let's check what we have inside it. So as you can see, we have this text here. I'm going to copy this, and inside here I'm going to have a heading tree and add this text here. Okay. And now for this box, we need to have another div, and it will take a class name of width full, height should be 200 pixel, and object should be cover. Okay. And also bg gray and 100, margin Y should be 3, and it should be gray. Okay. And place item center. Okay. Following this, we are going to have cursor pointer, and bg should be cover, bg no repeat. Okay. This should be cursor pointer. Alright. Okay, this div is for selecting our image, and also we need to have this text inside it. So inside this div, I'm going to have a text. So the text is going to be at image. Okay. Now you can see this text is inside our box. To bring that text in the middle of the box, I have added this grid and place item center. Okay. So now following that, we need to have an input for our file. So the type is going to be file, and this should be hidden. Now using this box, we should be able to open this. So I'm going to write here image ref is equal to use ref, and it's going to be null by default. Okay, let's make it capitalized, and I'm going to pass it to this input here, which is this one, and it should be ref, which is equal to this image ref. Okay. So now I'm going to have a handle click here, and I should write image ref dot current dot click. Okay. Now let's add an on click to this box. I'm going to have an on click function here, and just add this function. Okay. So now if I click this box, as you can see, I'm able to open this file. Okay, so now when I pick an image, it should be printed here. For that cause, I'm going to have a use state hook here, and I'm going to call this image URL. Set image URL should be equal to use state hook, and it's going to be empty string by default. Now we need to have an onChange function here. We're going to get this event, and let's set image URL. We need to create a URL object here. So URL dot create object URL, and we are going to create it using e dot target dot files with index 0. Okay, now inside this box I'm going to have a style. So background image should be this URL. So I'm going to add URL, and inside this parentheses I'm going to get this image dynamically. So the image URL is going to be this image URL. Okay, I'm going to add it here. So now if I select an image here, let's say this one, you can see we have this image, but still we can see this text. Now let's hide it. So in here I'm going to set a condition. If we don't have this image URL, then we are going to display this text. Okay, now we don't have any image URL link inside this use state hook. We have this text. So if I select an image from here, now you can see we don't have that text anymore. Alright, now let's add this input and this text editor. So I'm going to open this right from here, and I just simply copy them from here and add it there. Okay, so following this input I'm going to add them. Okay, now let's import this React-query, and for now let's comment them here. Okay, we have them here, but we need to change their font sizes. Okay, so for this input I just get rid of this text size, and following that we need to have a border bottom, and border color should be gray and 300, and also we need to have padding y of 2. Okay, now it's looking good. So for this text editor I'm going to get rid of this right class, and we need to have a border for this one also. Okay, now you can see our text editor and this title is ready. Alright, as you can see we have much more padding for this text editor. So instead of this margin y, we need to have a padding y of 3. Okay, now you can see we have a good text editor padding here. Alright, now you can see we have this text. I'm going to copy this text from here, and down this text editor we need to have a paragraph and add it here. So I'm going to have a class name for this, and text color should be gray and 500. We need to have parent tab of 4, and text size is going to be small. So this note should be bold. I'm going to add it inside this span tag, and we need to have a class name of font bold. Okay, now you can see here is our text. Alright, our left side is completed. Now let's implement the right side. As you can see we have this add tag in here, and also this text. Now let's add them. So I'm going to copy this text from here, and inside this div I'm going to have another heading tree and add this text, and this time the text size should be 2XL. And we need to have some more class names here. It should be flex column, gap is going to be 4, margin bottom 5, and for MD devices above, margin bottom should be 0. Okay, I think we should have this gap between left and right. Now let's check what's the matter. So Up here I have added a flex box, and I forget to add this dash here. Okay, now you can see we have this gap. Alright, let's copy this text from here, and down this heading tree I'm going to add a paragraph and just add this text here. Okay, and actually as you can see this name is bold, so we need to add it inside a separate tag. So I'm going to copy this name from here and add a span tag here. Okay, and this span tag will have a class name of font bold, and it should be capitalized. Alright, now you can see here is my name. Now let's implement this add tag. Okay guys, now to implement this we are going to add a new library. Just open this React tags input, and you can see we have this command. Just copy this from here and open the terminal here and just install it here. Okay, now if I scroll down, as you can see we need to have the CSS link. So again I'm going to add it inside this index.jsx, similar to this one. Okay, so I'm going to close this. So I'm going to copy this from here and open this preview. Down this paragraph I'm going to paste it. Now let's import it. Okay, again I'm going to delete this value and unchange. We need to have a user-state hook for this input, so I'm going to call this tags and set tags, which is equal to user-state, and it's going to be empty array by default. Okay, now let's pass them. So for the value it's going to be tags, and for the unchange it's going to be the set tags. As you can see, now we have this input here. Okay, following that we need to have this button. Now let's add the button. So I'm going to have a button here, and the text is going to be publish now, and we are going to have a class name here. It's going to be vite again, and we need to have a background color of green and 800, and also width should be fit. We need to change the text color also, so text is going to be white. Now let's check it. You can see here is our button. I'm going to add border radius, so rounded is going to be full. Okay guys, now let's close this model. So in here, if you remember, we have this icon, which is this one, but we are going to close this inside this right component. Okay, so to close this div we need to have another user-state hook. So when I click this button, it should be opened, but you can see both publish button and this right component are not at the same level, so we can pass the user-state hook using props. For that cause we are going to use this context API, so we can have access to that user-state hook in all components. And up here I'm going to have a new user-state hook, and I'm going to call it publish and set publish, which is equal to the user-state hook, and it's gonna be false by default. I'm going to pass it to this value here, so we can have access this in any component that we need. Okay, so inside this right component I'm going to import it, which is coming from our context API, and I don't need this one. Also in here we need to define a class name, and we are going to have some dynamic value here. So if we have published true, then it should be visible with the opacity of 100. Okay, otherwise it should be invisible with the opacity of 0. Okay, let's have our transition. transition all, and duration should be this 200. Okay, now you can see our model is closed. Now let's open it using this button. So I'm going to open this home header again. So in here I'm going to import this set publish function, and using this publish button I'm going to have an on click and just set this publish to be true. Okay, now if I click this publish button here, you can see I'm able to open this model. Now let's close this. So I'm going to open this preview, and we are going to import it here also, or I just get it here, set publish, and just pass it to this preview component. Okay, so in here I'm going to get it, and I'm going to add an on click function here and set it to be false. Now if I click this icon, you can see it will be disappeared. Okay, so now if I write some text in here, we need to get this inputs value. We want those text to be printed here. So first of all, now let's get your values here. So I'm going to open this write component, and up here as you can see we have this description. I have already taken your values here, and we need to have a use state hook for our title. Set title, and it's going to be equal to use state hook and empty string. Okay, we are going to have a value for this. It's gonna be title, and on-chain function, let's get this event set title should be e dot target dot value. Okay, so I'm going to pass this description and this title. So in here I'm going to paste them. Alright, now let's receive them inside this preview component. Okay, as you can see we have this input and this React-query text editor. So we need to have another use state hook for this text editor. So up here I'm going to write disk and set disk is going to be use state hook and empty string by default. Now let's pass them here. So I'm going to uncomment it. Instead of the description we are going to write disk and set disk. Okay, now we need to have another use state hook for our image and also this title input. So in here I'm going to have another use state hook, and I'm gonna call it preview and set preview. It's going to be equal to use state hook, and this time we are going to store them inside an object. So the first one is title, it's empty string, and the second one is going to be photo, it's going to be empty string also. Now let's get this photo details. Again I'm going to add this curly braces here. Okay, so we are going to set preview in here and spread this preview, and we need to change this photo data. It's going to be e dot target dot files with index 0. Okay, and for this input we are going to have a value preview dot title, and we need to have an on-chain function here. We are going to spread this preview and change the title value to be e dot target dot value. Alright, now you could successfully get their values, but when I type something here and click this button, we should get these values here. So to do that, we are going to have a use effect hook up here, and here I'm going to have a use effect hook. Okay, and this empty dependency, and here we need to check if we have title and description, the value that we receive from our write component. So if they have some value, and this should be or, Then we are going to set the preview to be this spread and preview. So we are going to set the value of title to be this title, okay, and also set disk to be description, and otherwise we want them to be empty. So I just copy them from here. This one should be empty string and this also should be empty string, okay, and based on title and description changes we want this value to be updated. Now let's type some text here inside this title and this text editor, okay. Now if I click this publish, you can see we could successfully get these values in here. Alright, we have this data. Now let's implement how you can publish a post. So down here we need to have another function. I'm gonna call this handle submit. Inside here we are going to have a try and catch block. Okay, now in here at first we need to validate our input. So I'm going to check if our preview.title, the title is equal to empty string, or our description is equal to empty string. Then we are going to return a toast notification here, and it's going to be all, and we are going to simply return this, okay. And for this error message here I'm going to have another error message toast notification, and it should be error dot message. Okay, now let's add this handle submit to this button down here. Okay, now let's check it. As you can see we have these values, so I'm gonna get rid of them here, and if I click this button you can see all fields are required, and we can set a condition for this tags also. So in here I can say if this tags dot length is equal to 0, then we are going to set this error message, okay. And also for this title we want the user to type at least 15 characters. So in here I'm going to say if preview.title.length is smaller than 15, then we are going to return another error message. This time it should be, so now our letters are less than 15. If I click this publish now, okay, we need to have some tags here, new post, let's say. If I click this button you can see title must be at least 15 letters, okay. So our input validation is ready. Now let's implement our logic to post a new post here. So at first we need to have our collection, so I'm gonna name this collections, and we are going to import collection function again here from Firebase file store. We are going to get the DB, okay, and following that we need to define our collection name. In this case I'm going to name this posts, okay. Now similar to the profile page we need to upload the image, so I don't want to waste time. I'm going to open that component again inside this profile, edit profile. If you remember, in here we have uploaded our image, so this one. So I'm going to copy them from here and just paste it here. Now we need to import this ref. Of course this function should be asynchronous function, and also we need to have this storage from Firebase file, okay, and the name should be preview.photo.name, okay, which is this one. And also our image data is going to be this preview.photo, okay. And finally we are going to get this download URL, and that's it, okay. So Now we need to have another function coming from Firebase, and it's called add doc. So this function will help us add a new collection inside Firebase. It will take our collections, okay, which is this one, and following that we are going to have an object, and inside this object we need to write all the data that we want to push to the database. So the first one is going to be user ID, should be user ID, and user ID should be current user dot uid. Now let's get this current user. So in here I'm going to say current user is coming from block. Okay, now we need to import it manually. Following this user ID, we are going to have our title data. It's going to coming from preview.title. We are going to get our description tags. For the post image, it should be this image URL, and we need to have a date for when our post is created. So in here I'm going to say created at date.now. okay, and also we need to have another variable to count our page views. So I'm going to name this page views, and by default it's going to be 0. So these are all the data that we are going to send to our database. So once the data has been uploaded, we are going to send a success message. So it's going to be toast.success, and post has been added. Okay, and we need to bring these inputs back to empty. So in here I'm going to say set preview, title should be empty string, and also this photo should be empty string. Okay, I'm going to add this text here. So when I click this publish, I want to be redirected to the home page. So for that I'm going to import another hook from React Router DOM, and it is navigate. The hook is called use navigate. Okay, now let's add it down here. So down here we are going to have this function, and we want to be redirected to the home page, and also we want to close this model. So we are going to set the publish to be false. Finally, when we click this button, we are going to have a loading. Because of this asynchronous behavior of this function, it will wait for a while. So I'm going to have a loading use state hook here, loading set loading. It's going to be equal to use state, and it will be false by default. So I'm going to copy this loading here. So when our function start posting our data, this should be true. Okay, and finally we need to have this finally here. Okay, we are going to set the loading to be false. So if we face any error, or if we could successfully added our post, then our loading will be set to false. So I'm going to add this loading in here. Instead of this text, we are going to have a condition. If we have loading, we are going to say submitting. Otherwise, we are going to add this publish now text. Okay guys, this is our function. Now let's check it. So in here I'm going to choose an image, and let's say first post here, and also let's say test description. I'm going to add some tags here, tags, and it should be book. Let's say, as you can see, if I open this Firebase here, we don't have that post collection, so our collection will be down this user. If I click this publish now, okay, DB is not defined, and also this title. So let's import our DB here. And also I forget to import this function, okay, and this get download URL also. Okay, now we are ready. So instead of this text, at least we should have 15 characters. So I'm going to say this is my first post in this app or application to make it much more longer, and I want to be test disk here. Okay, let's make it bold. And if I click this publish now, you can see we have this submitting loading. We need to wait for a while, and finally post has been added. So if I open this Firebase and refresh the page here, you can see we are going to have another collection which is called post. We have all the data, so this is our created date, description, page views, image, and you can see our title. So everything is here. Now let's push this code to our GitHub. So in here I'm going to state all changes, and I'm going to write here that adding post is implemented. So I'm going to commit this here.